And we're back. You didn't really miss anything, fortunately, because I caught it almost as it stopped recording. So just as I was saying earlier, we've added our minced garlic and our bay leaf cut in half, or just torn in half, and our olive oil, a tablespoon of that, to the pan, and we're going to heat that on medium-high heat. So then once this is heated, once this oil is nice and heated, we're going to add in our onion and our celery and then cook that until it's translucent. I'm really happy I didn't really miss too much on the recording. We're going to be continuing the cooking process. Our rice is coming along really nicely too. I'm going to make sure to stir this. You stir the rice semi-frequently to make sure it doesn't burn. Stir, stir, stir. I think this rice looks beautiful. You want to make sure to keep the lid on as much as possible so the fumes cook it. Try a little bit so far. Very good. Severely underdone, but that's okay. So 10 minutes left on the timer. Wait for this oil to heat and sizzle. This oil looks pretty heated to me. We rinse our hands. We're going to remove our cutting board. Take our onion off for just a brief second. Then we're going to put not our carrots in yet, we're just going to put our celery and our onion right in there. Look at that nice sizzle. Sounds great. If a little carrot gets in there, it's okay. We still have the vast majority of our carrot on the cutting board. So now we're going to stir this together until the onion and celery is translucent. Starting to look wonderful. I would do it really till they're almost translucent, so you don't burn the onions and the celery when you throw in the carrot. So once these are almost translucent, I will be putting in the carrot. We are still recording, so you are not missing anything. This is good. This is good. I love this. Stir frequently and ensure so you don't get burns. You go some runaway that almost escaped, or almost totally escaped. You throw it right back in. I had a little piece of onion that came out, came to the side where I was cooking, clean area, so I threw it back in. These are starting to get almost translucent. There's a kind of a divide in my family about how much you should do your onions. I know one person in my family doesn't like their onions done too much, while a lot of other people like them more done. So it's really up to your preference onto how much you want these done. You want to stir, stir, stir to make sure there's no burning at the bottom of the pan. It's a little while longer on this. They're almost once the little bigger chunks of onions on the ones on the bigger side get semi-translucent, then we can put our carrots in. And then we can cook till those carrots are nice and tender. I forget who said it, but it was a quote from Toy Story. It said, you can't rush art. I think it was the guy that was trying to fix Woody, but it's kind of like this. You can't rush the process of getting your onions semi-tender. Or like saying translucent. Sorry. Wrong vocabulary word there. I'd say we're good now. All that waiting paid off. Carrots in. Finally, you can have these nice carrots in your Doria, and then cook them till they're tender. Everything's going to be tender. In it goes. In it all goes. If you're seeing a lot of burnt flavor on the bottom of your pan, that's okay, because we're going to be deglazing that with the chicken stock later. We're still recording, that's good. I forgot to check. I have to stir my rice too. Oh boy. Okay, see how this is, earlier I was able to stir it a lot more easily, but now I have to stir my rice a lot more heavily, or it takes me a lot more effort. And that's when the rice is almost done. What's our timer on the rice? The rice is done in 3 minutes. Smells starting to smell amazing. Our onions are getting really tender now. They're almost translucent. They're starting, oh, they'll be really translucent soon. They were almost translucent when I put the carrots in. Our carrots are tenderizing. Some of our carrots are just starting to fall apart, which is right where we want to be. I really like this. We're still recording. I can tell because I'm seeing myself stir. I'm seeing myself stir, and the camera's picking it up. I think just a little longer for some of the bigger chunks, and then we'll be good. Around. Rice is done in a minute. Smells kind of burnt right now, but that's because we're going to be taking all the burnt flavors out. Carrot should be tender. Now we're going to add 6 ounces of beef and 6 ounces of pork in, and then we're going to stir. And then we're going to stir that occasionally. So the meat is pink. So meat in. This is 6 ounces of beef and 6 ounces of pork. That's in. We're gonna add the meat. Now we're breaking it up, stirring until tender, or stirring occasionally. Sorry. That's time for our rice. Our rice is done. That's gone off simmer now. It's starting to smell amazing. Now this meat is getting cooked until it's no longer pink. Now we're going to stir this meat occasionally, so we don't need to do it as much anymore. We're going to cook until it's no longer pink. Now it's starting to smell really good. This starts to smell amazing. I hope you guys are enjoying the same smells that I am. I'm just, rather than stirring now, I'm just breaking the meat up. Make sure the meat's getting spread nice and everywhere in the pan. We have a beautiful fond forming on the bottom. This is going to be really good for when we actually put the stock in, so therefore the fond becomes flavor. This is going to be wonderful. Alrighty. You might think it's getting burnt, but it's not. It's almost done. The meat, the beef at least is almost done. I still see some patches of pink on the pork, so we're going to have to. So we're going to be browning those off, and then once that's done, we're going to be putting in our stock. So in the meantime, while this browns, I'm going to start pouring out our stock. What happened to the cup? Oh no. Here's the cup. There we go. I just put water in here, so we can put regular old stock in here. I'm watching especially now for the video to stop recording, because this is around the 13 to 16 minute mark. This is where it starts to stop recording and not be very nice. So the first thing we're going to do now is crack open our chicken stock and start pouring our cup of chicken stock in. Really here you can use vegetable stock also, but I'm using chicken stock because my family likes it with chicken stock. So you can get 1.5 cups. The goal here is really to cover all of the ingredients. So once if 1.5 cups of chicken stock isn't enough to cover all the ingredients for you, then I recommend you just do it with you add water or more stock. You can do either of the two. The meat is almost entirely brown. You should have a point on the bottom where you have like a very thick crust, and it's wonderful. I love this. And it's almost done. We're just getting the last bit of pink on the inside done. Now stirring it gently, I'm stirring to see if I can see any leftover pink. There we go. It looks good now. Now chicken stock in. One. Two. We don't have enough to cover our ingredients. You generally do this before adding the chicken stock, but I'm gonna add salt and pepper now. You want to make sure this meat is on the saltier and the peppier side, because you want to because you're serving this with rice, so the rice is gonna be bland. So you want this to be extra nice and seasoned, beautifully seasoned. You don't have to have a really set amount of salt and pepper. Just put as much or as little in as you want. There you go. That's good salt and pepper in. I'm feeling a little wary. I want a little more chicken stock in there because I'm not seeing it fully cover the ingredients, so I'm going to put a little more in. You want to make sure you fully cover the ingredients. I wound up just putting in the rest of the box, and I think it's good as is. So this is the part where our fond gets nice and scraped up from the bottom, and now just incorporated its wonderful flavor. I think that. Wait, we're still recording, right? We're still recording. This is good. Okay, a little bit of a fright there for a minute. We're still recording. As I was saying, this is the part where your beautiful fonds that you spend so much time and effort making is going to become beautiful flavor. Now, after we put our broth in this, we're going to put our curry powder in. 1 tablespoon of curry powder. This is where the curry part comes. Stir it nice and in there. Now we're going to cover this, now that we've incorporated everything in, we're going to cover this and bring it to a boil. You want to be checking frequently to see if you've brought it to a boil. Then once you've fully brought this dish to a boil, you can skim off the foam and cover it for another 5 minutes and cook it. We're almost to a boil now. We're almost there. A little hot, so I'm going to get my mitt and move this quickly, or my quick rag, if you don't get burned. Rice is still looking beautiful. Our onion back on the board. We're still recording. This is great. This is wonderful. Having a really good time, actually. Yes, this is wonderful. We're at a boil now, so we're going to take our spoon that we got earlier and skim off that. This isn't the spoon we got earlier, but we're going to start skimming off the fat. Once this does, you get a nice clear soup here. Maybe just ladle it a little bit and skim off the fat. Ladle and skim. Probably should have gotten some more of a boil. But if you just ladle a little bit and skim off some of the fat, you're good. is starting to look and smell wonderful. So I think we've pretty much gotten the fat up that we need. There's still a little in there, but that's okay. So now we're going to put this all the way down to medium-low heat, and then we're going to cook it for 5 minutes. We're still recording. This is wonderful. 5 minutes on the timer. That's 50 minutes. We're not doing that. I actually put 50 minutes on the timer. Now we have 5 minutes on the timer. So we wait 5 minutes and we're good. If you still notice some fat, you can continue to skim it off. I'm going to do that right now because I still see a little fat that's coming to the top more. Because the problem is if you skim off a lot of the fat, sometimes you run, at least I ran the risk of getting some of my soup too, which I didn't want to get at all. Because I have this wonderful soup here that I don't want to lose, you know what I'm saying? So I'd rather have some fat in my soup than have less soup. You understand what I'm saying? Good. Flip that on. There you go. Toss in the scraps. And now we wait a couple minutes. 4 minutes left on, roughly a little under 4 minutes on the timer. Again, as I was saying with this curry Doria in my last video, this is something that smells really great, tastes really great, and it's a big family pleaser. You can make this when you have a lot of family coming over, or even if you have just yourself. I recommend doing this for all occasions. I don't know about freezing this, but I definitely recommend putting it in the microwave. Heating it up in the microwave does a really good job of preserving it, or preserving the good flavor. But now while we're actually waiting for this to heat up, what we can do is we can start preparing our next step. So, I'm finding the curry powder a bit hard to close. It's okay. There we go. That's probably the reason why the top sprinkler wasn't fully closed. So our next step, what we're going to do is we're going to need 1 tablespoon of unsalted butter, 2 tablespoons of our ketchup, and 2 tablespoons of our wonderful katsu sauce. If you don't have katsu sauce, it's really easy to make it. All you need is ketchup, sugar, Worcester sauce, and oyster sauce. And if you just Google the words tonkatsu sauce, T-O-N-K-A-T-S-U, that's T-O-N-K-A-T-S-U. I know I sound like a phone radio salesman, but that's perfectly okay. If you Google tonkatsu sauce, you can actually find a really good homemade recipe using those 4 ingredients, and it's the first link that came up for me. How much time we have left? We're still recording. A little over 2 minutes on the timer. Check on our soup. Smells and looks wonderful. Remember, you don't want this on medium high now. You want this on medium low when you're simmering it. Almost done. What I can do now though is I can actually open up my butter and cut a tablespoon right off. I have my tablespoon nicely cut. This is all smushy because I've left it out at room temperature. That's okay. A little over a minute on the timer, 1 minute and 5. We're still filming, which is great. Seconds on the timer. seconds left. We start taking our lid off soon. 9 seconds left. This is just if you need a reference model for what oyster sauce looks like, this is a Lecom Key brand. It just says oyster flavored sauce on it. So that's the oyster sauce. Alright, that's our timer. Timer off. Now we're going to take off our lid. Put that down for a second. We're going to grab our butter. Throw our tablespoon of butter in. We're going to grab our katsu sauce. Put 2 tablespoons of that katsu sauce in. One, 2. Make sure you get all that tonkatsu goodness in. If you're wondering what tonkatsu refers to, it's actually referring to pork cutlet. So this is really pork cutlet sauce. Another word for it. This is our ketchup, first tablespoon. Second tablespoon of ketchup. Throw that all in. Make sure it's nice and incorporated everywhere, nice and evenly. Now we're going to do this mixture for about 10 minutes. Meaning we're just going to let it sit. We're going to let it sit for 10 minutes. You want to make sure this meat is a bit more on the seasoned side, because as I said earlier, you're going to be eating this with rice. So now we're going to cook this and reduce this for 10 minutes. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to wait for the sauce to go down. We're going to wait for the liquid to go down. Then once we don't have our liquid anymore, our soup stock in the pan, we'll be ready to transfer to do the next step. So I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. And then start moving on to our next step. So our next step is we're going to get on our baking tray. We have a nice baking tray. And we're going to grease it up with our other tablespoon of butter. So you need 2 tablespoons of butter. So you get a second tablespoon of butter and a little more. And you start greasing it. You just put the butter right in. You want to spread it all around, even on the sides as well. Because what you want to do with this is you're gonna stick your rice in here. Make sure this gets nice and smeared all in there, nice and buttery. Make sure your rice gets to slide all in and out. The reason why you grease it up so heavily is because you want rice to stick to the bottom of the pan, and it would be a big mess for your baking tray. And you also lose some of your wonderful rice. So this is our greased up baking tray. We're going to leave that there for a second. Get a paper towel, rub our hands. We're still filming. This is wonderful. 8 minutes and 30 seconds on our sauce reduction, and what do you know? The liquid's actually starting to go down, which is really nice. Now we've had this rice sitting here for a while. You might be saying to yourself, Christopher, what in the world are we doing with this rice? And that is a really good question. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our rice, the rice that we made all at the beginning of the video, and we're going to take it out. Look at how nice and steamy it is. Beautiful, beautiful rice. We're going to put this down. And we're going to start just taking it out, lopping it into our baking tray like so. We made 3 cups because we want to be able to cook this entire baking tray with rice. This is the bottom of your dish, and this is why you want the meat mixture to be saltier, because you're going to be serving it with all this rice. I really like the composition of this dish because you really get everything in it. You get a grain, which is rice. You get vegetables and your carrots, your onion, and your celery. You get your meat and you get your meat from your beef and pork, and then you're also gonna get your dairy from your cheese. So you're really hitting on all the major food groups here. I think that's a big boon to this dish, big benefit, because you get an extra healthy serving of everything. And on top of that, it tastes good too. So not only are you eating healthy, it tastes really good too. If you can't put a lot of salt in your food because you have a low sodium diet like my grandmother does, you can cut back on the salt, and instead of using chicken stock, you can use vegetable stock instead, because I believe if there's not much more salt in the vegetable stock, that'll be a healthier option and more conducive to your diet. It's almost entirely in there. Make sure this is nice and spread. Runaway rice, make sure to pat it down. One of the other best parts about this dish, and its seemingly endless benefits, is that you don't actually have to cook this for long in the oven. 6 minutes left on the timer for reducing the sauce. And the reason for that is because it's already cooked. The meat is cooking here. It's cooked earlier on medium-high heat. It's browned earlier, and now you're just reducing the stock. So the meat has already gotten the cooking that it needs. So it doesn't have to spend a lot of time in the oven. You really just want to melt the cheese on the inside. I know it doesn't seem like we have cheese yet, but we're going to have cheese soon. Four minutes, 50 seconds left on the stock reducing. The level is starting to go down significantly. Smelling really good too. It has a curry brown look. That's really nice too. This is our tray of rice on the bottom. We'll pat this down now. Make sure it's spread nice and evenly all around. Go. It's nice and spread flat and evenly. Make sure to put a little more rice within the corners. And we're still filming, which is wonderful because normally we should have filming problems by now. So hopefully we don't have any filming problems throughout this video. 3 minutes, 22 seconds on the stock reducing. We're almost done. If you notice this here, how the level of stock is a lot lower than it was earlier. I know you can't see it now, but I can definitely see how the stock is starting to come down and be absorbed by the meat and veggies. And it's also a lot easier to scrape my utensil here, my wooden spatula, on the bottom of the pan. Because all that fond that we talked about, how it was on the bottom, that was really crusty and hard, has really become incorporated into the soup, and it's been really yummy. Two minutes, 39 seconds on the soup. sauce. That's so wonderful. I'll wait for that to reduce just a little more. While we wait for this dish to reduce just a little more, what we can do is we can talk about the cheese that we're putting on. We're going to talk about this mozzarella cheese that we're going to shred a little bit and take and sprinkle on. We're going to do the same with the pecorino romano. So open up our mozzarella. It may seem like I'm an abysmal cheese shredder, and I am, but that's okay because this is all going to get nice and melty. Beautiful. If you just cube it like this, it should be okay. It doesn't have to be strict cubes. It doesn't have to look intensely pretty because it's all going to get nice and melty. I might shred some more as I need it, because first I want to see how the meat mixture looks in 47 seconds on the rice tray. And although all my stock isn't really reduced yet, that's perfectly okay. And the reason that's perfectly okay is because I can put some of the liquid in here, and it actually really enhances the flavor. So if you want to entirely reduce it, you can do that, and that's a wonderful thing to do. But if you don't want to entirely reduce it, that's also a really great thing to do. So even after 10 minutes and you don't have it fully reduced, that's perfectly okay. I say in a couple of minutes, actually 6 seconds. That's the end of my timer. Just to be safe, I'll get a last spoon out. Start ladling my meat mixture on from my pot right into my tray, like so. There's only a little bit here, but you can see how the meat mixture is going on. My curry sauce too. At this point, it's already cooked, so if you want to seal a spoonful for yourself at the end, you certainly can. Right now I'm just scooping my meat mixture on. This is how it's starting to look so far. Just checking in, see how more meat mixture is going on. Meat mixture is still going on. I probably should have gotten a bigger spoon to do this, but that's okay. There's still a little black stuff at the bottom of the pan, at the bottom of the pot. That's okay. At this point, we want to turn our heat off. I'm still filming, which is wonderful. I haven't even checked for that. Yeah, we're good. Yes. Okay, we're okay. We're still filming. Wonderful. If you want to see if you can pour a little sauce on, it's okay. That's good there. You can't really pour too much when it's too heavy because you'll drop it and burn yourself, and that wouldn't be good. Still filling, which is good. Yeah, pretty much all we can out of this, which is great. I'll take the last little spoonful for myself. It's really good. Sorry, it tastes really good. Now we're gonna start sprinkling our mozzarella on like so. We need a lot more shredded mozzarella. You want, realistically, you can tear with your hands a little bit. You just want to make sure it gets all nice and sprinkled on. Be generous with your cheese because you want this to be really cheesy. Notice how I'm not making like really artistic cheese forms. I really stress this. It doesn't have to look, the cheese layer doesn't have to be entirely beautiful. Just to be nice and cheesy. Make sure it all gets nice and cheesed up. I think that's suitable in the cheese department for at least the mozzarella, but not the pecorino romano, which also has to be sprinkled on. Beautiful cheese, nice and sprinkled on. Wonderful. Now comes the best part, or really one of the best parts. We're gonna put the breadcrumbs on. Beautiful. Wanted to check to make sure I didn't have any open breadcrumbs. I'll get some scissors to open this. Okay. While I'm doing this here, I'm going to preheat my oven to broil. If we don't have broil, we can do it to bake. You don't really need to do it at too high of a heat because what you're going to be doing is just melting the cheese, so everything's already cooked. You don't really need to worry about having too high of a heat. We have our panko breadcrumbs here. Nice and beautiful. Those go on. Make sure you don't be skimpy on these either. You want a nice crust. If you don't have panko breadcrumbs, regular breadcrumbs should work just as well. That looks wonderful. This is our finished, or this is our almost finished product. We just have to put this in the oven. And really, you're just doing this to melt the cheese. It doesn't really need to be too big. It's almost done. I'd say we put this in. You just want to put it on until you have a good crust and you get it nice and brown. Wait for that to get nice and brown on the top. Overall, the cooking process I think went really smoothly. I may have put this in a little early because the light hasn't turned off on my oven yet, but that's okay. You don't really want it to be too hot. Worst comes to worst, it heats up with the oven, and by the time the oven is heated, your cheese is already melted, because I just really want to reiterate, you don't have to put this too much in the oven. And that's because the cheese, as everything is already cooked, you're just trying to melt the cheese and get a nice brown crust on the top. My mom absolutely hates the word golden brown, because I remember the last time I tried to make fried chicken golden brown, and it didn't really work out. We had to put it in the oven for a lot longer than we had wanted to. So the moral of the story is, always make sure you have precise temperatures, and don't really go off the words golden brown too much, because golden brown can mean many, many different things. We're still not entirely heated yet. I should have heated this a little bit earlier. You know what? That's okay. So what I will do is I'm going to end the video here, and then I am going to come back and refilm when the breadcrumb is melted. The cheese is melted and the breadcrumbs are all brown. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.